Today, we begin in the middle of a moment many applicants never prepared for. A shutdown threat that Congress had delayed, debated, and dismissed. A sudden deadline. A bright warning light flashing across USCIS systems. An anxious applicant asking questions that sound simple, but aren't. This shutdown didn't unfold over weeks. It unfolded in 96 hours. 96 hours that could freeze your green card processing. 96 hours that could halt your citizenship interview. 96 hours that could stop work permit renewals, or accelerate delays beyond anything you expected. One wrong assumption here, and you could lose months of progress that took years to build tomorrow. What Congress failed to do crossed a line that USCIS hoped would hold. And when that line broke, immigration processing did not hesitate. It responded with contingency plans, staff furloughs, and service suspensions so severe they revealed how fragile the entire system actually is. Most people panic during shutdowns. They make the same mistake. They fall straight into the trap. But today, you're going to do something different. For 4 weeks now, there had been signals. Not from official USCIS announcements, not from Department of Homeland Security briefings, just signals that Congress was preparing something catastrophic. Congress has been divided, yes, but also increasingly dysfunctional in that approach. Their actions followed a pattern, a stalemate, almost a guarantee. But what triggered concern among immigration attorneys this weekend was that the pattern suddenly became reality. Experts who monitor government funding recognize the indicators: the failed budget negotiations, the continuing resolution collapse, the partisan standoffs over unrelated issues, the sudden midnight deadline. And when Congress fails to fund the government, USCIS processing becomes collateral damage. Budget analysts noticed something else. The shutdown contingency plans being circulated weren't just about delayed services. They were about which immigration benefits continue and which stop completely. They were about whether your application keeps moving or sits untouched for weeks. They were about the difference between essential and non-essential processing. For applicants waiting on green card approvals, this classification wasn't academic. For families with citizenship interviews scheduled, this wasn't political theater. For workers whose authorization expires during the shutdown, this was survival. The government was shutting down, and nobody could tell you what happens to your case. Early Friday evening, Department of Homeland Security officials detected what they described as imminent appropriations lapse, including funding cessation for USCIS operations not seen since the 2018-2019 government shutdown. These are disruptions agencies only face when Congress completely fails. Staff furloughs, service suspensions, processing freezes, or complete operational shutdowns for non-fee-funded activities. Observers weren't sure which USCIS services would continue, or whether anything would process at all. But one thing was clear: Congress was failing to fund the government. And when that happens, immigration processing suffers regardless of whether your fees already paid for the service. Behind the scenes, immigration attorneys began receiving urgent guidance. Not official USCIS memos, not policy announcements, just internal communications from officers warning that processing would change dramatically, that interviews might be canceled, that decisions might be delayed, that the entire system might effectively freeze. They understood something crucial. Shutdowns don't just pause government, they destroy timelines applicants depend on. The warning issued by USCIS leadership about shutdown impacts was not reassuring. It was not optimistic. It was brutal. Briefing after briefing described the shutdown effects as comprehensive, unavoidable, and most importantly, unpredictable in duration. But warnings only help if applicants understand what they actually mean. USCIS didn't explain which services stop. They didn't clarify whether applications already submitted keep processing. They didn't specify whether interviews scheduled during shutdowns would occur. And when agencies provide warnings without actionable information, panic replaces preparation. Today, federal sources confirmed that government shutdown would suspend USCIS processing for certain applications, including services that rely on government-funded personnel, even though USCIS operates primarily on application fees. They issued warnings before Congress finalized budget failure. They prepared contingency plans before funding lapsed. They notified staff of potential furloughs before the shutdown actually began. This wasn't speculation. It was operational reality. And that's what made immigration attorneys so alarmed. Because when USCIS warns about processing suspensions, they're not being overcautious. They're telling you exactly what will happen. And what will happen is your case stops moving. Inside USCIS field offices, the confusion is overwhelming. Officers are being told which functions are essential and which aren't. But those determinations are inconsistent across offices. What counts as essential in one location is non-essential in another. What continues in California might stop in Texas. And when processing decisions vary by office, applicants lose any ability to predict their case timelines. Here's what immigration attorneys know about how shutdowns actually affect USCIS operations. The agency operates on a hybrid funding model. Most services are fee-funded, meaning your application fees pay for processing. But some functions require congressional appropriations. That funding split creates chaos during shutdowns. Fee-funded services theoretically continue, but if the officers processing those services are paid through appropriations, they get furloughed. If the systems supporting processing require appropriated funds, they might shut down. If oversight functions are appropriated, quality control disappears. The result? Even fee-funded applications stop moving because the infrastructure supporting them requires government funding. Green card processing is particularly vulnerable. USCIS officers who conduct interviews are paid through appropriations in some offices and fees in others. Background check systems that verify security clearances require government funding. Interagency coordination with State Department and other agencies depends on appropriated personnel. When any piece of that infrastructure fails, the entire process stops. Your I-485 might be fee-funded, but if the officer scheduled to interview you is furloughed, your case doesn't move. If the background check system is offline, your approval can't be finalized. If State Department coordination stops, your visa number can't be allocated. Fee funding doesn't protect you from shutdown impacts. It just makes the disruptions less predictable. Citizenship applications face similar chaos. N-400 processing is fee-funded, but naturalization ceremonies require USCIS officers who might be furloughed. Oath scheduling systems might be offline. Court coordination for judicial ceremonies might be suspended. You can pass your interview, you can be approved. But if ceremonies aren't happening, you can't become a citizen. And your case sits in limbo while Congress argues about unrelated budget disputes. That's the cruelty of shutdown impacts on immigration. Your application did everything right. You paid all fees, you submitted all evidence, you attended all appointments. But congressional dysfunction still derails your case. Work permit renewals create immediate crises during shutdowns. If your EAD expires during a government shutdown, you might lose work authorization even if your renewal application is pending. Some employers accept receipt notices showing timely filing. Others require valid cards. If USCIS isn't processing renewals because officers are furloughed, you might lose your job. Not because your application was denied, not because you did anything wrong, because Congress failed to pass a budget. The economic impact on immigrant families during shutdowns is devastating. Workers lose income, families can't pay rent, children go without necessities. All while their applications sit untouched in government offices. And when the shutdown ends and processing resumes, there's no compensation for lost wages, no expedited processing to make up for delays. Just a backlog that takes months to clear while your financial situation remains catastrophic. Asylum seekers face particularly dangerous shutdown impacts. If immigration courts furlough staff, hearings get canceled. If those cancellations push your hearing date back months or years, you remain in limbo, without work authorization or permanent status. Meanwhile, enforcement operations often continue during shutdowns. ICE is considered essential. Detention facilities remain open. deportations proceed. But the immigration judges who could grant you relief are furloughed. You can be detained and removed during a shutdown, but you can't get a hearing to fight your case. That's not justice. That's bureaucratic violence. Family-based petitions see massive delays from shutdowns. If you filed an I-130 for a spouse or parent or child, processing stops when officers are furloughed. Those delays compound because USCIS processes petitions in the order received. A 3-week shutdown might add 6 months to processing times. Because when processing stops, new applications keep arriving. When operations resume, the backlog is enormous. And clearing that backlog takes far longer than the shutdown itself. Your family member who was supposed to join you next year might now wait another 18 months. Not because of application issues, because Congress couldn't govern. Immigration attorneys are advising clients on shutdown preparation that feels absurd, but is necessary. File everything immediately, even if you're not quite ready. Attend every appointment, even if you haven't heard confirmation. Keep evidence of every submission in case records get lost during shutdown chaos. This shouldn't be necessary. But when government becomes unreliable, individuals bear the burden of protecting themselves. The political reality behind shutdowns is infuriating for immigrants. Congress uses government funding as leverage for completely unrelated policy disputes. Republicans demand border security provisions. Democrats refuse conditions on spending bills. Neither side cares that immigrant families suffer while they negotiate. Your green card application becomes a bargaining chip in debates about defense spending or tax policy or regulatory changes that have nothing to do with immigration. Your life is held hostage by political dysfunction. And when shutdowns end, politicians declare victory while applicants are left with destroyed timelines and no accountability. Past shutdown patterns reveal what applicants should expect. The 2018-2019 shutdown lasted 35 days and created processing delays that persisted for over a year. Applications submitted during the shutdown weren't processed until months after government reopened. Interview schedules took 6 months to normalize. If this shutdown lasts even 2 weeks, expect impacts that extend into summer. USCIS doesn't have surge capacity to quickly clear backlogs. They process cases methodically at normal pace once funding resumes. That means your case doesn't just pause during the shutdown. It gets delayed by the shutdown duration plus the time needed to clear accumulated backlog. A 2-week shutdown creates 3-month delays. Some USCIS services might continue because they're deemed essential. Premium processing for certain employment cases, refugee processing in some circumstances, emergency advance parole in limited situations. But essential determinations are made by political appointees, not by assessment of what applicants actually need. The criteria are opaque and inconsistent, and they change between shutdowns based on which administration controls policy. You can't rely on anything being deemed essential. You have to prepare for everything to stop. Customer service during shutdowns becomes completely unavailable. USCIS contact center staff are furloughed. Emma chatbot might remain functional, but can't provide case-specific information. Field offices are closed. InfoPass appointments are canceled. If something goes wrong with your case during a shutdown, you have no recourse. No one to contact. No way to resolve problems. No method for getting information. Your application exists in a black box, and you're powerless to affect it. Online account access might continue. You might be able to see case status updates, but those updates won't change during the shutdown because no one is working on your case. The system just shows whatever status existed when the shutdown began. Watching your case status obsessively during a shutdown accomplishes nothing except increasing anxiety. The status won't update until processing resumes, and you won't know when that happens until it's already occurred. So what should applicants do right now if shutdown is imminent or already started? First, file everything you can immediately. If you're eligible for any benefit, submit the application now. Don't wait for documentation to be perfect. Don't delay for minor issues. File before the shutdown freezes processing completely. Second, Attend every scheduled appointment even without confirmation. If you have an interview or biometrics appointment scheduled during potential shutdown dates, show up. The worst outcome is the office is closed. The best outcome is they're conducting limited operations and you get processed. Third, document everything about your case status. Screenshot your online account, print receipts, save all correspondence. If records get lost during shutdown chaos, you'll need proof of where your case stood. Fourth, prepare financially for extended delays. If you're depending on work authorization renewal, have savings to cover potential gaps. If you're waiting on green card approval to change jobs, maintain current employment. Don't make financial decisions assuming normal processing timelines. Fifth, communicate with employers if work authorization might be affected. Explain shutdown impacts. Provide documentation of pending applications. Ask about policies for receipt notice acceptance. Don't wait until your EAD expires to have these conversations. Sixth, connect with immigration attorneys or advocacy organizations. They're tracking shutdown impacts in real time. They know which offices are operating and which aren't. They can provide guidance specific to your situation. Seventh, manage expectations about when this resolves. Shutdowns are inherently unpredictable. Congress might pass funding tomorrow, or the shutdown might last weeks. Don't base life decisions on assumptions about quick resolution. The most important thing to understand about government shutdowns and USCIS processing is this: the system is fragile, and you are not the priority. Congress doesn't consider immigration processing when making budget decisions. USCIS doesn't advocate for applicants during funding lapses. Political actors don't care about your destroyed timeline. You have to protect yourself, because no one else will. As this shutdown unfolds, more details will emerge about which USCIS services actually continue and which stop. But one thing is already clear: knowing this right doesn't make you a criminal. It makes you smart. It means you're prepared. It means you're protecting your family. Don't assume your application keeps processing during shutdowns. Don't trust that fee funding protects you from impacts. Don't expect normal timelines when government becomes dysfunctional. Share this video with every applicant waiting on USCIS processing. It might save their case one day. Subscribe to USA Immigration Path for more protection. We protect you with real information as the next phase unfolds.